Hi, I'm Dan Danford. Welcome to another episode of Money Made Easy for DadsDivorce.com. We've got a question from one of the viewers of the website today. I've heard you mention Dave Ramsey a couple of times on these segments. I was wondering, who are other financial advisors you really respect, and why do you think they are better than the rest of the field? Hey, that's a good question, and Dave Ramsey comes up just because probably today he's one of the 2 or 3 most visible people talking about personal finance. And there is a lot to respect about Dave Ramsey and his success in the field. There are others, Susie Orman, Jim Cramer's on TV, people watch him. Clark Howard does a lot of work. They're all good. And I guess I'm not going to endorse any particular one, but I'm going to give you a couple of tools here, or at least a couple of things to think about when you listen to them. First of all, almost any of those name advisors have good advice. There are bits and pieces that would work for almost everyone. And just by nature of the fact that somebody is offering advice through the media means that the advice has to be pretty general. And I know that they take phone calls sometimes, and that the phone calls are very specific, and they answer the question as best they can to that particular situation. And I think that's all important. But I guess the caveat I want to mention, because it's so important, is that you need to evaluate their suggestions for your circumstances. You know, that they each have, because they're media personalities, okay, they each have target populations that they work with. I think Dave Ramsey is a great example. Dave Ramsey today is probably the closest thing we have to a rock star in personal finance. I mean, I'm not familiar with anybody else that can go into a town in middle America and book the local municipal auditorium and fill it with screaming fans for personal finance topics, okay? I mean, he's just very good at what he does. He talks. He's entertaining to listen to, his advice is good, all those things. But one of the things you need to understand about Dave Ramsey is that his target population, the people he talks to the most, are young families, okay? So when Dave talks to people, you know, most of the advice that he gives, while probably is general good advice for everybody, is really targeted to those young families. A great example is his discussion of debt. You know, Dave Ramsey is just anti-debt. Now, you know, one of the reasons is because he's had problems with that in his own life, and so he's created tools to work around it, and he shows other people how to work around it. Where it's important, though, is that, you know, with my clients that I work with, debt isn't really an issue. I mean, most of them have used debt judiciously, and if anything, it's probably helped their situation and not hurt their situation. So sometimes one of them will come in and talk to me, and they'll say, well, you know, I heard Dave Ramsey, and he was talking about how you need to pay off everything, and what do I need to do? And what I have to point out is, you know, Dave was probably talking to their son or grandson, okay? Dave wasn't necessarily talking to them because their situation isn't quite like that. Now, it's true of all these people. If you look at radio talk shows, for instance, radio talk shows, for the most part, the listening audience are 50-plus-year-old men. That's typically who listens to radio talk shows. So if you take somebody like Clark Howard, or somebody who has a powerful talk show presence, that's the folks he's probably talking to. Susie Orman does a great job on TV, and a lot of her information is good for a lot of different people. But she is particularly strong with women, and she spends a lot of time talking about issues of independence and self-sufficiency and those kinds of issues that are really important to many of the women she talks to. And I guess my point about all of this is that it's all good advice, but you need to tailor it to your situation. You need to pull the things from any of them that work for you and ignore the things that weren't really targeted for you. One of the things that I tell people, and this is going to sound kind of silly maybe, but I truly believe it, is that most of the information that's presented on personal finance has really kind of evolved over a period of 4 or 5 decades from sales presentations. I mean, even the things that we believe about insurance or investing or other things are basically things that somebody created 4 or 5 decades ago to sell somebody something. About the only place you can find truly objective information is in the academic setting. So if you live nearby a college or a university or someplace like that, number one, if you take personal finance class, you'll probably get good information. But if you don't take the personal finance class, you can probably go to the bookstore and buy a personal finance textbook, and that is probably going to be the most objective information you're going to get. The only reason I tell you that is because then when you listen to Susie or Jim Cramer or Dave Ramsey or Clark Howard, and they talk about a topic that interests you, then you can go to that textbook, you can open it up and you can read that information and who it applies to and who it doesn't apply to and what the advantages and disadvantages are. And I genuinely think that through that filter, you'll find a way to use that information to your best benefit. So I don't endorse any particular one. I think they all do a decent job and they all have truths that they can reveal to you. But I just think you have to be very careful to just pull out the information that applies to you and your particular situation. That's it for another episode of Money Made Easy for DadsDivorce.com. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks.